Hello, and thank you for joining us for the first of the 2022 Executive Function Workshops from the Hill School of Wilmington. Nikki Snow, Associate Director, will be presenting this session, which is called Why Can't You Get It Together?
Does this sound familiar to you? I forgot my homework. I can't find my backpack. What homework? You're late. Oh, I will. I'm thinking. Stop fidgeting. I need a pencil. Mom, can you bring my binder to the school? Why don't you clean your room? 30 minutes later, nothing has been accomplished. Our goals for this session are to help you understand what the executive functioning skills are, the developmental milestones, the common roadblocks that exist to achieving your EF potential. We're going to take a survey and take a look at our strengths and weaknesses in executive functioning, and also use that survey data to choose one area to improve on by learning a strategy. But most importantly, our goal is to facilitate an understanding of the executive functioning skills and provide us with a why behind the frustrating behaviors, and hopefully ease some of the frustration that's experienced when living with or working with someone with executive functioning weaknesses. So let's start by defining what is executive functioning. So executive functioning is defined as a set of processes that all have to do with managing oneself and one's resources in order to achieve a goal. These are neurologically based skills that involve mental control and self-regulation. Researchers at the Center for Child Development in Harvard compare executive functioning skills to the air traffic control system at an airport. This is the air traffic control system within our brains. The executive functioning skills are found in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And this is the last part of the brain to develop, and it typically matures around age 25. When we think about the executive functioning skills, we can divide them into two categories. The first category will be the thinking skills or the cognitive skills, and the other side is going to be the doing skills or the behavioral skills. So on the cognitive side, we have things like working memory, planning and prioritizing, organization, time management, and metacognition. And on the behavioral or the doing side, we have skills such as response inhibition and emotional control, sustained attention, task initiation, goal-directed persistence, and flexibility. When we look at the way that these skills develop, we're not born with these skills. We're born with the wiring to develop these skills. Infant studies show that response inhibition, working memory, emotional control, and attention develop within the first 6 to 12 months of life. Reactions to change in cognitive flexibility can be observed as early as 12 to 24 months. But skills such as task initiation, organization, time management, and persistence, these develop a little later. They begin in preschool and then develop on in through early elementary school. Now, when you look at the image, when we pay attention to this area right here, these are the teen years. And we know that our teens really struggle a lot with the development of their executive functioning. And they're trying to manage so much in their worlds, yet their executive functioning skills have yet to reach maturity. So no wonder this point in life tends to be a little difficult. These skills overall are difficult to measure, but we do know that executive functioning skills are shaped by life experiences, nurturing, and coaching. So along the road to developing proficiency within these skills, we can often encounter some roadblocks along the way. Some factors that impede executive functioning development would be a diagnosis of ADHD, ADD, or a combined type diagnosis, cognitive processing deficits, any trauma that may have occurred. If a child is growing up in a chaotic, unsafe, or unpredictable environment during early childhood, the development of these skills can be impeded. And then as we age, these skills also start to weaken. And students that are, or individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, they're typically 30 to 40% behind their peers in the development of the executive functioning skills. Another roadblock to developing executive functioning skills is your mindset. If an individual has a negative mindset, this is based on the work of Dr. Carol Dweck. She reminds us that having a growth mindset is just as important to finding success in developing the executive functioning skills as the coaching that'll take place to help someone achieve potential. A child who lacks a growth mindset or is under excess stress tends to get stuck in the fight or flight zone, which can place a roadblock in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. This roadblock shuts the area down and allows the individual to focus on survival, thus further impeding the executive functioning skills. So let's begin by taking a survey. You received a survey via email prior to this recording, and the survey you can take for yourself to survey your own executive functioning skills, or you may take it thinking of a student that you have, or maybe an individual in your life. As you read each of the descriptors and rate them, try not to overthink it. Go with your immediate reaction. We're going to take 3 minutes of time to complete our surveys, and once they're done, I'm going to show you how to score it on the screen so you don't have to flip back and forth and follow the confusing scoring guidelines. So for the next 3 minutes, I would like you to complete your survey. The survey that you just completed comes from a book written by Peg Dawson and Richard Guare. It's called Smart But Scattered, and they have 3 different variations of this survey. There's one that's tailored more toward elementary level students. There's one specifically for upper level and middle level, and then there's one for high school and adult. The one that you took is just a generic form of this survey, and researchers really do struggle to find a true assessment of executive functioning skills. The survey, like you just completed, is more common. So let's take a look at how to score it. We're going to be looking for your top 3 strengths and your top 3 weaknesses. So the first thing you have to do is total the 3 scores within each section. And then you can use the key on the screen in front of you to show which executive functioning skill each section was scoring. Don't be surprised if you have sections that are tied. And we want to circle our 3 highest scores and put a box around your 3 lowest scores. And then on the back of the form, there's a place to record your 3 strengths and your 3 weaknesses. After you have those recorded, let's focus in on the weaknesses and maybe put a star next to the one that you want to investigate the most. And then as I unpack each of these skills in the presentation, you can look at ways to modify the environment and ways to coach the skill that we're talking about. And another important thing to note is if you take a look at your strengths, often the frustrations you have with others happen to be their weaknesses and our areas of strength. So now that we've identified strengths and weaknesses, what do we do? Well, we're going to work on 2 things at the same time to help reach the potential for the executive functioning skill. First, we have to modify the environment. And after we modify the environment, we're going to look for ways to coach the skill. Proper intervention is a combination of both. We use modifications in the environment and coach the skill. Both are necessary because if we modify the environment and then we don't coach the skill, it's like riding a bicycle with training wheels for your entire life. You never learn to develop the weak executive functioning skill because the environment is teaching you to rely on a crutch. When we talk about coaching, there's a series of steps that we're going to follow. We have to remember to involve the individual that we're working with in the planning because we need them to buy into this. They have to understand the why of what we're doing. So first in the coaching sequence, we're going to identify the goal. After we identify the goal, we're going to implement a strategy. And then we also need to think about how are we going to hold this person accountable for what we're working on? Because face it, if we want change to occur and there isn't some sort of accountability, we won't make any change. And we also need to think about reflecting and revising. Sometimes the strategy that we implement doesn't work, and we have to go back and try something new and reflect on what worked, what didn't, and revise our plan. So let's take some time to unpack each of the executive functioning skills in the order in which they develop. Pay attention to the one that you selected from your 3 weaknesses, and maybe collect a strategy that you could implement. The first one we'll take a look at is response inhibition. This is thinking before you act. This is the ability to resist the urge to say or do something so one can evaluate a situation and how his or her behavior might impact it. In young children, a weakness can look like a child who struggles to wait. Or for an older student, it might be you're in the middle of a basketball game and one of the athletes challenges a referee's call. Or maybe in the adult world, this is somebody that you know that frequently flies off the handle or says something and it's the insert foot in mouth moment. Maybe it's someone who struggles to follow rules, or when you're in close proximity, you struggle with physical contact and knowing your awareness of yourself in space. This is someone who struggles to calm down, especially when they're emotionally charged, and doesn't walk away during confrontation. This can also be somebody who doesn't or is unable to say no to a better opportunity or activity when they've already made a commitment. And who better to show us this than Dennis the Menace, who's sitting in the corner thinking, by the time I think about what I'm going to do, I already did it. So another model, response inhibition is very much self-control. It's waiting, patience, turn taking, and resisting the urge, even resisting an urge to blurt out your thoughts. In the 1960s, the marshmallow test was completed, and psychologists took young children and put them in a room with marshmallows and said they were going to leave the room, and they leave the child in the room with the marshmallow, and the children were recorded whether they could control themselves from eating the marshmallow, or they were also given the opportunity for delayed gratification. If you could sit with the marshmallow for an extended period of time, then you might get 2 marshmallows at the end. And the behaviors of these children were studied and documented, and then they were followed for a number of years in their lifetime. And what the psychologist found was these children were tracked, and the children who could control their impulses at a young age had better grades, were less likely to be in trouble with the law, and were more successful in many ways. So how do we coach this skill? Well, we're going to start by looking at ways to modify the environment, and at the same time, find some ways to coach the skill. So if we're modifying the environment to control inhibition, we're going to post rules and expectations so there's no question. We'll delay gratification, maybe using graphs or sticker charts. Researchers have found that this skill is more susceptible to change in adolescence. We see our teens making more decisions based on gut feelings rather than sound, mature judgment. The trajectory toward proficiency within this skill is a very jagged one. And remember, this skill is so much harder to coach when emotionally charged or when the child is overly tired. So consistency is key, and controlling emotions is also key. When we're coaching it, role playing can help. Reviewing expectations prior to being in a situation where it's hard to control yourself, or even natural consequences. What happens when you don't control yourself? How do others respond around you? We can unpack this metacognitively by walking the individual through these questions. Let's reflect. What are some things I do without thinking? Where are some common situations where I act without thinking? And what will I do to try to stay controlled? This can help raise self-awareness and promote more self-control. Another way to coach this skill is to use books where the individual can relate with the main character. Julia Cook is an author who writes a number of books on behaviors. This one, My Mouth is a Volcano, is all about a character who really struggles to not blurt and talk out. Another one would be Jack Ganto's Joey Pigs That Swallowed the Key. The main character in this book is diagnosed with ADHD, and the impulsive behaviors lead to a lot of difficult situations. And you can analyze cause and effect. What could Joey have done differently in the situation? These are very relatable texts. It's Hard to Be a Verb is another one by Julia Cook. In this book, the child's in constant motion. He's always doing, everything's busy, and his body is hard to control. Another one would be Ungifted by Gordon Corman. Again, the main character in this book also struggles with ADHD, and the impulsive behaviors get him into some serious trouble. Ungifted would be more for a middle school level reader. These books can lead to great discussions about the behaviors, a lot of connections between the reader and the main character, and help raise self-awareness and look at other ways to solve problems. The next one we'll look at is working memory. Working memory is our ability to hold information in memory while performing complex tasks. So we can think of this one as the server holding the tray. So your working memory is the tray, and it can only hold so many items until it starts to get tippy and falls over. As more and more piles up on that tray, it starts to spill over. Your working memory has a capacity. It also takes time to stretch and build the capacity. Working memory also includes how well we can picture things or visualize.
This episode is sponsored by Wondrium. Stick around till the end of the video to learn more about it. Hello, brains. What's working memory? I forgot. Working memory, noun, is our ability to hold information temporarily in our head while we work with it for a short period of time. In computer terms, it's kind of like our RAM. It's where we store information we're actively working with, either by remembering it, often while paying attention to something else, or doing something with it. We use working memory for things like remembering a number while we look for a pen to write it down, doing math in our head, or remembering what we just read. Everyone's working memory has limits. We all just get a few slots, and the information in those slots goes away pretty quickly if we don't keep thinking about it, to make space for new information. Which is fine. Most of the information we think about in a day, we don't actually need to remember long term. And if we do need to remember it, we can save it to our hard drive through techniques like studying. While our long-term memory, or hard drive, is typically just fine, working memory is often impaired in ADHD. We essentially get fewer slots, especially when it comes to verbal/auditory working memory, which includes things like reading or remembering what someone said. This is why we get a lot of comments of, "Did anybody else need to rewind this video?" Understandably, this can interfere with our ability to encode information into long-term storage, so we can remember it later. It can also interfere with simple everyday tasks like answering a question a teacher just asked. As an example, let's say this neurotypical student has a working memory capacity that allows her to temporarily hold on to 4 pieces of information, essentially 4 slots. And this student with ADHD has 3. Now imagine the teacher asks a question followed by 3 possible answers. The neurotypical student might be able to answer the question no problem. But by the time the teacher got to the 3rd possible answer, the ADHD student already forgot the question. Even if our working memory isn't impaired, our difficulty with attention regulation means the information in those slots can get kicked out a lot more easily as we start attending to other thoughts. And even if we have the same working memory capacity and we manage to ignore that thought that popped into our head so we can stay focused, those with ADHD have to spend more effort actively directing their attention and actions than their neurotypical peers, which means we're taking up working memory slots for things like remembering to sit still. None of these situations are because we aren't smart or aren't trying hard enough. It's about working memory. This is why lists and planners are often recommended. This episode is sponsored by Wondrium. Stick around till the end of the video.
So how do we help working memory? One thing we can do is make eye contact before giving a direction, breaking tasks down into smaller steps, limit distractions, check for understanding after a direction is given. Sometimes we ask students to repeat back what is expected, or if I say to my daughter, go in your room, get your backpack, your shoes, and your soccer ball, I might ask her, what are you going to do? And she needs to restate those things to me. That's checking for understanding. Offering copies of class notes so the student is able to attend to the lecture or to the lesson that you're teaching and not be overburdened with the working memory of holding on to everything they have an outline. At the same time we make modifications, we also want to coach the skill. One of the best things we can do to free up working memory space is write it down. Take the time to write it down. When you feel yourself feeling like you can't hold anything more in mind and we find ourselves jotting down notes, that's a pretty big indicator that your working memory is filling up. We need to utilize checklists, teach visualization. If you can ask the student to visualize what they're going to do or the series of multi-step directions that you've just given them. Playing some working memory exercises. I'll do a few with you. Let's say you're in the car and you say 4 numbers. You say, I'm going to say 4 numbers, 6, 5, 4, 1. Ask the child to repeat it backwards. Or play word sequencing games. I'm going to say a list of foods. You repeat them back to me from smallest to largest. Apple, grape, watermelon. The child has to say grape, apple, watermelon. We can do sequencing activities. I can ask, what happens first when eating ice cream? Do you take the ice cream out of the freezer or do you scoop the ice cream into the bowl? Other things, games like Simon Says or the telephone game or sequencing, these all help to work to build capacity in working memory. The next one that we'll take a look at is emotional control. This is our ability to manage our emotions to complete tasks, reach goals, or regulate behavior. To work on this skill, modifying the environment, one of the best things we can do is identify where the triggers are that trigger the emotion and reduce those triggers. Another thing you can do, one of our tutors has utilized this strategy. When a student enters the room, do a feelings check-in, promoting self-awareness of what emotion they are feeling and maybe things that they might need to get off their chest before the lesson even starts. So you see an example feelings check-in board here where the emotions are listed with pictures and words. And then the students have to place their name under how they're feeling as they enter the room. When we're coaching this, we want to teach students how to recognize these situations or recognize the feelings and the physical signs of the emotions, and then teach them some coping strategies and rehearse these. Worry and anxiety is a big one. And worry and anxiety, when you're feeling overwhelmed, that's often a cue that your working memory is also taxed out. And then when anxiety pops up, that blocks the prefrontal cortex and we go into that survival mode, and that reduces our ability to function at our best with our executive functioning skills. So this is another metacognitive activity where you promote self-awareness and some reflection. For an individual that struggles with worry and anxiety, a chart like this can be used, and you can substitute any emotion for worried, but I might say, I get worried when I get nervous, when I'm feeling nervous, I can, and the bottom box be strategies or things I can do to help alleviate this emotion. Again, books are excellent ways to connect and show how others deal with these things. Julia Cook wrote, I Just Don't Like the Sound of No. Kevin Hinke's book, Wemberly Worried. There's another one called When I Get Upset. And the one on the far right is a workbook that can be completed together, an adult with a child. What do I do when I worry? And it walks through overcoming things, anxiety related situations. What are things that we can control, things we cannot control? That is a little more interactive. These three tend to be more read alouds. The next executive functioning skill is sustained attention. This is our ability to pay attention in spite of distractibility, fatigue, or boredom. Students who have difficulty paying attention often verbalize that they are paying attention, but they're paying attention to everything all at the same time. And they struggle to have focused attention. They struggle to have sustained attention. Sustained attention is when we can hold our attention for longer than 10 minutes. Where this skill is weak, we might observe things such as daydreaming, students who shut down when they lose interest in what they're doing, or quitting when something is too difficult.
My name is Julia. I'm in 2nd grade, and paying attention is really hard for me. When I have trouble paying attention and go daydreaming, my daydream land's called La La Land. All I know is I'm spacing out, and it's kind of like I can't see anything. It makes me sad because I can't like really learn. I was in La La Land, and they called on me, and I had no idea what was going on, and it was super embarrassing because I had to think of something that I could say to like save me. And everyone was kind of like making fun of me, and they were judging me like differently.
For some students, it can be really hard to pay attention in class. That dog barking outside the window can seem so much more interesting than anything the teacher is saying. I like to describe children with attention issues as having a mind that's a powerful race car, but with bicycle brakes. Some students feel the urge to be in motion constantly. Others want to talk to their friends during class or draw pictures of spaceships instead of listening to what the teacher is saying. That can get you into all kinds of trouble. And it can lead to social isolation too, because your behavior can drive other kids away. We can help children learn to manage the distractions and to channel their energy productively. Your child's teacher can be a big ally. By working together, you can find strategies to help your child stay focused on the task at hand. We'd like to help children build better brakes for their race car minds so that they can start winning more of the races in their lives.
I can still listen while doing something else. And I like doing that because it's like doing two things. One thing's listening, and the other thing's kind of doing something. I can doodle while listening, and that's naturally the best way that I listen. Another strategy that I use is to, I can ask my teacher if I can take like a lap around the school, like walking around. If I like get stuck on my chair, that helps me a lot. And also we have the fidgets that we can play in our hand with our hands. A fidget looks like this, and this one's squishy. You can squeeze around and it doesn't really break or pop. It's like a toy, but we use it as a tool. It keeps me from going into La La Land. My parents both have ADHD, and they went through the stage I did where I didn't know it was wrong, and they helped me get through it, and I love that about them. Well, I love them in general, but still.
So as we reflect briefly on what Julia just shared, some of the best things we can do when we're coaching these skills is just to get the child or the individual to verbalize, just like Julia just did. Developing sustained attention takes time, and it takes practice to build stamina. This needs to be done in small chunks, working toward longer periods of focused attention. To modify the environment, we want to reduce distractions, prompt the individual to attend, modify task length, choose the best time of day when the person is most alert to practice this, set a purpose for the listening, use timers, and reinforce the on-task behaviors. When we're coaching, we want to practice this with less interesting topics. This is something my middle schoolers talk about a lot. How do I keep my brain engaged when I'm reading something I'm really not interested in? This takes practice for sustained attention. We want to teach self-monitoring skills. Can I feel when I'm losing my focus? Can I tell when I'm not retaining what I'm reading? And have the child identify something to look forward to after the time is up that we're trying to sustain attention. It also helps to turn off notifications on any devices to help limit distractions. It's okay to allow them to doodle or fidget while learning, as long as that fidget doesn't become a toy. You will know if someone can use a fidget to fidget productively or if it becomes a toy quite quickly. Sometimes it takes a few different ones to try out. I have students that use putty and students that use squishies and students that have bouncy bands on their chairs. But for the ones that really do need to move to sustain attention, it's a tool that works. The next one we're going to take a look at is task initiation. Task initiation is our ability to begin a task without procrastination. Can we just start a task? This can be very difficult for students. It's a huge issue that I see with my students who struggle in writing. They really struggle to get started. To modify the environment for a student that struggles getting started with task initiation, provide cues and prompts for them to start, have help readily available, and set a time for tasks that are often avoided. Coaching the skill, Coaching the skill, help the child make a plan for doing the task. Along with task initiation comes planning and prioritizing. This is our ability to make a roadmap to complete a task or accomplish a goal. What are the things I need to do today, and which things do I need to do first? Modifying the environment to help someone with planning and prioritizing might be modeling what a plan is, designing a plan together, using tools such as agendas, calendars, or apps. Coaching the skill, we can utilize a nightly to-do list. We can encourage the individual to select the least desired task first and ask questions to help the child prioritize. Like, what do you think we need to do first? What is the most important task on this list? A dry erase calendar in the child's workspace can be a useful tool to help with task initiation and planning and prioritizing, because we don't have to rewrite the plan over and over again. We can just wipe the dry erase and move the task if need be. You can map out things like planning, studying, study times, long-term projects, assignments, extracurricular activities, appointments, events. A dry erase would allow for change, It allows for a visualization of long-term planning and breaking it down into the smaller steps. And it also allows for some reflection as to what's working and what isn't. This helps activate many executive functioning skills that we need to keep and maintain. There's been another version of this shared by the Hill Learning Center using sticky notes. So instead of having to erase your agenda or erase your to-dos, you can just simply move the sticky note. A lot of students really don't appreciate having to rewrite tasks over and over again. The nightly to-do list is one that I want to show you. This was suggested in an executive functioning training from the Hill Learning Center. And every evening when the child comes home, they sit down and plan out their evening. What's the date? What are the things I need to do tonight? What projects do I need to work on? Do I need to study for any upcoming tests or exams? And do I have any extracurricular commitments? Another executive functioning skill has to do with organization. This is our ability to create and maintain systems to keep track of materials and information. So I'm sure many of us interact with someone whose desk or bedroom may look something like this. And I'm sure we also hear the same things such as, well, that organization works for me, or I can find anything that I need, but we know this is not the most efficient way to organize your space. When we think of organizing, we need to start by modifying the environment. And this means you might have to develop as a system for organizing. And then I'm going to show you after this one, another slide that breaks that down a little bit, but you might initially suggest a way to organize an area by implementing a system. And that system might have to be revisited based on whether it works for the individual or not. If you're an educator and you assign digital tasks or digital assignments, offering a printed copy for the students as well helps them maintain organization. Putting a password sheet in a homework binder can be a way to help a child stay organized. Labeling bins in their room for organization, or having a schoolwork bin at the house. When the child comes home, they come in the door, the bin's on the counter, they know to empty the book bag into the bin before proceeding on to the rest of the day. When you're coaching organization, this is one that takes a lot of practice together. You need to offer a little bit of choice in the system that could be implemented and used, and it's something that has to be monitored daily. These organizational systems become the foundation of how the child internalizes them, and then we have to tweak them and make it unique to them. This is best accomplished using a gradual release model where I do and then we do it together, and then eventually the child assimilates and it becomes an independent practice. If we create an organizational system, we also have to follow through with holding the individual accountable for it, and maybe even adding a reward in the process. This is a good one to think about, that gradual release of responsibility model and what it sort of looks like. And we're going to use the Berenstain Bears. So in the Berenstain Bears messy room, Mama is very upset when she walks into the kid's bedroom and it's a mess and she steps on the toys. She has to start by putting an organizational system in place with the children. She's helping them clean. She's helping them organize. She's created labeled boxes in the closet. Then she has to offer some guiding. This may be a daily check-in. It might be a weekly check-in. It could be longer than that as the child moves towards independence with the organizational system. But it requires a lot of guidance and a lot of accountability. And then, of course, in the end, we want to remove the adult. So we go from adult directed to adult guided to adult gone, where the child has assimilated the skill and is able to do it on their own. The next one we'll take a look at is time management. When we think about time management, it's our ability to estimate how much time you have, how to allocate it, and how to stay within the limits. Taking a look at modifying the environment to help someone who struggles with time management. First, the use of timers, posting schedules with time limits listed, and offering stop and check points to check in to see how time is being managed and how much has been accomplished. We really have to help the individual see time and feel time. How often do you hear comments like, this will take forever, or that's too long, or that isn't enough time? Picture schedules, clocks, alarms, apps, timers. These give parameters for tasks and help the individual internalize time. When we're coaching this skill, you can have the individual estimate, well, how long do you think it's going to take you to do your spelling? And how long will it take you to do your math homework? How long will it take you to do your reading homework? And allow them to estimate how much time it'll take, so that this is going to take forever, this is too long, disappears, and they have a realistic measurement of time for each task. Practice ways to record and mark time and help them follow schedules. Goal-directed persistence is another executive functioning skill, and this is our ability to have a goal, complete the goal, and not lose your attention along the way. If we struggle with setting goals and actually sticking to it, we start by modifying the environment by establishing realistic goals together. We might also offer rewards for persistence as we're working toward a long-term goal, or offer long-term rewards as well. Creating the goals together and posting them, making them visible is helpful. Coming up with long-term rewards that take time to work toward, but rewarding the persistence along the way is also important. We can use visual reminders as much as possible. And when something's difficult, motivate it with setting a goal and then rewarding the persistence toward the goal. Coach the skill by defining goals and then set small achievable goals. The student needs to feel some success along the way to be able to keep with the persistence, and help students understand that we often have to fail our way to success, and we learn from the mistakes when pursuing a goal. Cognitive flexibility is an executive functioning skill that it's our ability to mentally adapt our behaviors in ever-changing conditions. And one way to think about this is, if you struggle with cognitive flexibility, can you shift gears and be flexible, or is your clutch stuck? Weaknesses in cognitive flexibility are visible when individuals struggle with problem solving or the ability to look at another perspective. Having cognitive flexibility allows one to revise plans when faced with an obstacle, a setback, new information, or mistakes. And I'm sure you remember the scene from Friends when they're trying to take the couch up the stairs and Ross is screaming, pivot. It's our ability to mentally pivot. So let's feel some cognitive flexibility. On the screen, you can see words that are written in different colors. The first time through, I want you to read the words left to right, top to bottom, just reading the word. Don't pay any attention to the color. Now you're going to feel yourself shift. This time, I want you to read the words, but not the printed word. Read the color that the word is printed in. So I would read green, purple, yellow, red. Could you feel yourself shift? The fight against your brain to try not to read the word or to read the color, that's cognitive flexibility. If we struggle in this area, we're going to modify the environment by announcing schedule changes ahead of time. Normalizing errors, letting the individual know that it's not about perfection. It's okay to make mistakes. Make steps in a process very explicit. Fail together, fail in front of the child. Coaching the skill, when given a problem or faced with a situation, talk out possible solutions. Analyze it. Do you have a choice in this change? Problem solve together and practice open-ended tasks. Metacognition is to think about our own thinking, or our ability to think about our own thinking. This is our ability to take a bird's eye view of yourself in a situation, reflect on that situation, and observe, how did you problem solve, or do some self-evaluation. You might ask yourself questions like, how did that go? Or what worked well in your study plan? Or what could be some reasons why you didn't perform as well as you thought you would? If an area of weakness is metacognition, modify the environment by evaluating performance, providing examples to match expectations, using monitoring checklists, or embedding questions in a conversation. Coach this skill. Use reflection journals. After a test or a quiz, ask the individual to reflect on their performance. As an adult, think aloud. Make your thinking visible to the child. Ask questions like, what is my problem? What's my plan? Am I following my plan? And how did I do? Let's face it, working on these skills, it's hard work, and it involves continual tweaking and revisions. You're fighting against things like developmental delays, our ever-changing society, which feeds off of things like instant gratification. We have shorter attention spans, the demands on our attention, it's everywhere, emails, notifications, to-do lists. We know helping build these skills has lifelong benefits, but we also need to utilize some motivation along the way. Often these tasks are not things we want to do, such as, I don't really want to keep my room organized, but they're things that we need to become disciplined in doing them. So sometimes we really don't have an intrinsic motivator. We might need to use some extrinsic motivation, or we also can just think about it as, it's not really something I want to do, but it's something I need to be disciplined to do. It's important that the individual buys in. They have to know, why does this matter? There's natural consequences when my executive functioning skills are weak or they fail. Maybe I utilize a token economy for some motivation. I offer specific praise to the individual, praising what is going well and where we need to work. Being disciplined about the things that I really don't want to do. Give them something to look forward to, a long-term goal, praising the short-term along the way. Maybe offer a menu of rewards and also a menu of consequences of what happens if we don't carry on. What we don't want to do, and this is so easy to do, we want to resist the urge to helicopter. When we're modifying the environment and coaching these skills, we really want to utilize the gradual release of responsibility. We want to work through the I do, where we're modeling, the we do, we're guiding and coaching, and the you do, where the individual is starting to assume some independence, and then continually reflect and revise. It's really easy as teachers and parents to become the individual's prefrontal cortex and do all of the executive functioning skills for them. But that will never lead to assimilation or independence. It's better to coach using the gradual release model and prepare yourself, because you're going to have to reflect and revise along the way. For example, if we're working on organization, we might need to try different styles of planners or different calendars till you find what works best for the individual. We can coach and give the strategies, but ultimately it's the individual who needs to find out what works for them and stick with it. What works for you might not be what works best for them. It's important that we involve the individual in the planning and the problem-solving process. So let's do a little bit of reflection ourselves. What are the executive functioning skills? Where are you or they, whoever you were thinking about when you did that survey, in what stage are they in development? Remember, these skills don't mature until age 25. And with a diagnosis of ADHD or ADD, they're going to be 30 to 40% even more delayed in the development of these skills. What are the roadblocks that could possibly be interfering with progress? Were you able to identify your strengths and weaknesses? And what strategy will you choose to take action?